Hi there, in this video I'll be showing you how to set up quick and simple workflows that send email alerts to your customers and your employees. So one thing every business has overdue invoices. And to deal with that, Books has a reminders option. And you can go by going to settings, going into reminders here, and you can set up reminders based on how overdue an invoice is. So let's say you can set up one for 10 days after the due date. And we can say remind only yourself or the customer or both. So now using these reminders, you can set how many days after a due date or how many days overdue an invoice is and send reminders to the customer and yourself. And we'll just cancel that. Now maybe you want something more custom where you only want to send overdue reminders based on an invoice's total. So in order to do that, we need to set up workflows. So let's exit out of here. Let's go back to settings. And to start setting up workflows, you just look for the automation tab and click on workflow rules. And let's create a new workflow. So let's say we'll call it an email alert for overdue invoices. And we'll say 1,000. So you can type a description here, but essentially we will send an email alert for overdue invoices if their total is over 1,000. So we're going to select an event-based workflow, and the action will be edited, and we're going to say any selected field is updated, and that field will be the status field. And we'll say each time, click next. So basically what this workflow trigger is saying is that we will run every time the status field is updated for that invoice. But of course we only want it to run for overdue invoices, so we will set the status is overdue. So now setting that as the criteria, we are only running this workflow for overdue invoices. But we also wanted to add a criteria for the amount. So we will select the total. So if the total is greater than a certain value, then we want this workflow to run. So for the sake of this video, we'll put 1,000. We can configure this as for your business. So we'll click down here. So now what we have set up is that when a invoice is updated, and that's the status field, and if the status is overdue and the total is over 1,000, then we will do an immediate action, and that action will be an email alert. So let's set that up. So we can select email alerts here, and we can pick an email alert we have configured. Let's add a new one, and we'll say overdue invoice alert. And we can click from, and you can select a user, you can select a template, you can create one, but we'll select default for now. And you can select the recipients. So you can say we want to send it to the contact and an employee, or just the employee, or whoever you wish to alert. So we'll select the employee for now, associate, and click save. So now we have set up an email alert so that when an invoice is updated, and the status is the one being updated. So if the status goes from sent to overdue and the total is greater than 1,000, then we send an email alert to an employee of our choosing or a customer. So of course you can configure this to fit your business needs. And let's click save. Now for customers who pay on time but they don't pay fully, you can create another workflow to send email alerts for partially paid invoices. So let's create another workflow, and we'll say partially paid alert. We'll select invoice again, and we'll make the same workflow type. So edited, and select the status field, and we'll say status is partially paid. There we go. And then we can send an immediate action, and we'll send another email alert, and of course you can customize your alert. Now this is for any invoice that is partially paid, but maybe you want to add a criteria. So let's say they only paid less than 50%. So you can do that by selecting or adding another criteria, and you can say amount paid, percentage, and it's less than 50. So if they paid only half of what they are due, then you can send an email alert. You can also set it up so that you can select the amount paid, and this value is the numeric amount. So you can say if they only paid less than 1,000 for an invoice, then maybe you send this email alert. So of course, depending on your business, you can customize this how you wish. Now we talked about automated reminders, and you can see those again if you go into settings and reminders over here. So in order to set these up, again, you have to type in a number of days after due date, but there isn't really a clear way to have any criterias in here. So you can replicate this with criterias in workflows. So let's close settings, go back to our workflow rules, and let's create a new workflow. And this time maybe we want to send an email alert for overdue invoices after 90 days with some criteria added. So we'll say 90 days overdue invoice alert. And let's select the invoice module again. And now instead of having an event based, because we want to send it 90 days after the due date, we will pick date based. So you type in 90 days here, we'll say after, and then we'll say after due date. So now 90 days after due date, we will trigger this workflow. And you can pick a time, so we'll select 9 a.m. and we'll say only once. But you can have maybe a daily or a weekly reminder. So let's click next. And here you can add criteria. So the default reminders option did not allow any criteria to be added, but you can select criteria here. So maybe you only want to send email alerts for overdue invoices by 90 days if their amount paid is not full, or maybe they are only partially paid. So you can say amount paid is less than 100%. You can also pick amount paid in numeric value. You can say maybe the total of the invoice is greater than a certain percent or a certain number. So maybe for only high profile, high value invoices. So let's say 1,000 or 10,000, depending on your business. So you can see you can set up a lot of criteria here, and then you can choose the email alert action again. So let's click save. Let's go into this again. So 90 days after the due date or 90 days overdue, if it meets these conditions, you send an email alert to the customer, yourself, or an employee. Now another thing we can look at is running workflows for high value invoices. So for example, sending email alerts to employees, or even a thank you email to customers with invoices over a certain amount. So again, you can click new workflow rule and we can say high value invoice alert. There we go. Again, we'll click event based, but this time we're going to click created because we want these to trigger on created. So let's click next. And this is where we pick our criteria. So of course, we'll just select a total. And if the total is greater than a certain number, let's say a high value for our business would be, let's say 2,500. Of course, you can customize this to your liking. And we can send another email alert, and we can choose one to send to our employees, or maybe even a thank you email for our customers. Now let's say a customer has fully paid our invoice. We can now configure sending another invoice or email to our customer to thank them for paying the invoice. So you can click another email workflow rule, and we'll say customer thank you alert. And this time we'll click edit it again, any selected field, and we'll choose status because we will select the status as having been paid. So status is paid. So with this status, we know that everything is paid, fully paid. Click done, and now you can select your email alert, and you can create an email alert for thanking the customer. And with that, these are just some of the custom email alerts we can create with various criteria to send to either our employees or our customers or both. With the power of workflows, you can create simple workflows to send email alerts for various types of triggers, criterias, and so on. Let us know what you think. Leave a comment below, and thank you for watching.